When we first moved into Pine Hollow Reserve, I thought we'd found our forever home. The neighborhood was picturesque quiet, tree-lined streets, white picket fences, and neighbors who waved from their driveways. My wife Jordan and I had saved for nearly a decade to afford the modest two-story house on Sycamore Lane. Our daughter Mia, 13 and already fiercely independent, immediately fell in love with the massive oak tree in the backyard. My father, Hank, a retired Navy chief, moved in with us after my mom passed away. We wanted him close, and the in-law suite made it easy. The first week was bliss. Friendly smiles, baked goods from the Johnsons next door, and a welcome basket on our porch from the local homeowners association. But that was also my first brush with what would soon become a nightmare. Inside the basket was a thick leather-bound binder, HOA regulations. I joked about it at dinner. Feels more like a security clearance handbook than neighborhood rules. I laughed. Hank raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. 2 weeks later, I got my first warning letter. Apparently, the mailbox I had painted tan didn't match the official driftwood beige approved by the HOA. I shrugged it off, emailed back with a picture of the paint code, and assumed that would be the end of it. It wasn't. The next day, I received a formal notice, $50 per day, until I repainted it. The signature at the bottom read, Cheryl Langford, HOA president. I hadn't met her yet, but her reputation preceded her. According to rumors floating around the block, Cheryl ran the HOA like a military regime, except with less mercy. Still, I believed we could reason with her. I repainted the mailbox anyway, not because I agreed, but because I didn't want to stir trouble. I even sent a polite message saying I looked forward to meeting her in person. A week later, I planted a small garden in the front yard, native wildflowers for pollinators and butterflies. Jordan and Mia had helped, laughing and getting their hands dirty. It felt like we were finally putting down roots. That feeling didn't last. 2 mornings later, a paper was taped to our door in bright red ink. Violation unauthorized landscaping. Fine, $100 day, until removed. My heart sank. I flipped through the HOA binder again and found a clause that specifically allowed native plants. I gathered documents, even an email from a local horticulture professor, and sent them all in a carefully worded response to Cheryl. No reply. What came instead was a knock on the door 3 nights later, 8:30 p.m. Cheryl herself stood there with 2 others, a lanky man in a tight suit, clutching a clipboard, and a burly, bald guy in what looked suspiciously like a private security uniform. No name tags, no badges, just presence. Mr. Grant, she said, not bothering to smile. We need to discuss your continued non-compliance. I invited them in, hoping we could clear things up. That was my second mistake. The conversation wasn't a conversation. It was a lecture. Cheryl spoke in clipped sentences, accusing me of degrading community standards. The man in the suit, Michael, her vice president, tapped on his tablet with every word she spoke. The security officer, introduced only as Rick, stood silent and stared like he was daring me to say something wrong. I showed them the regulations. Cheryl didn't even look at the page. We have board discretion, she said. Remove the flowers, or the fines will escalate. That's when Hank walked in. He scanned Rick's uniform, then Cheryl, then Michael. Nice costume, he said casually. But impersonating law enforcement is still a felony. Rick stiffened. Cheryl's eyes narrowed, and Michael fumbled with his tablet. We'll be in touch, she said, and left without another word. After that, the harassment escalated. Daily notices, claims our recycling bin was visible for 15 minutes past the allowed window. Accusations that Mia's bicycle leaned against the garage was unsightly. They even said our roof tiles might be reflecting too much sunlight. Jordan, who'd spent years working in property law, began writing formal rebuttals. I documented everything: photos, timestamps, color codes. Hank started recording all interactions and setting up additional security cameras around the property. He even installed a few hidden ones just in case. Then came the surveillance. Cars would slow roll past our house at odd hours. One morning, Jordan found our car's brake line had been tampered with. The mechanic said it looked deliberate. We filed a police report, but there was nothing to tie it back to anyone specific. Mia stopped getting invited to neighborhood events. Parents whispered about us. Jordan lost 2 clients, both of whom lived in the subdivision. They're trying to isolate us, she said one night, her voice tight. Trying to wear us down. The final straw came in the form of an email Mia intercepted. She's a tech whiz and had managed to access a part of the HOA's website that wasn't properly secured. The email was from Cheryl to Rick and Michael. It read, "Initiate Phase 2. Enforcement visit at 3 HOA. Full uniforms. Bring tools. Make it look official." She showed me the email with wide eyes. They're planning something. Hank didn't even blink. We prep, he said. That night, we fortified. Security cameras were repositioned. A direct line to the local police dispatcher who we'd worked with before was activated. Hank had his legal carry permit and stationed himself at the front door. I took the living room. Jordan and Mia stayed upstairs with phones and emergency contacts. At 3:00 a.m. sharp, pounding shook our front door. "This is HOA enforcement," a voice barked. "Open up for emergency inspection through the peephole." I saw Rick, now fully dressed in a fake police uniform, his hand on what looked like a gun holster. Cheryl stood behind him, arms crossed. Michael was filming everything. "Show me identification, or leave." I called out, loud enough for the camera mics to catch. Rick didn't answer. Instead, he smashed the glass panel beside the door with a baton and reached inside. That was the line. Hank stepped forward from the shadows. Flashlight mounted beneath his firearm. "This is a lawful warning," he said, voice calm and steady. "Step back immediately, or you will be treated as armed intruders." Rick hesitated, then foolishly raised his fake gun. Hank fired not at him, but into the wall behind. The sound exploded like thunder. Rick dropped the replica weapon immediately and stumbled back. Cheryl screamed. And then came the red and blue lights. Officer Marisol Evans, our contact, arrived seconds later with 2 backup units. Cheryl, Rick, and Michael were arrested on the spot. Charges included impersonating law enforcement, breaking and entering, and attempted coercion. Over the next few weeks, we revealed everything: emails, financial misappropriation, forged inspection records, and a paper trail linking Cheryl to a shell corporation that had quietly bought out 5 foreclosed homes in the neighborhood. She had orchestrated fines to force people out, then bought their homes through a proxy to resell at profit. When the news hit, it was explosive. Local media covered it for weeks. The HOA board was disbanded. Cheryl was indicted on multiple felony counts. Rick and Michael took plea deals. A temporary residence council was formed with Jordan on the legal team and Hank as security consultant. As for me, I stood in my front yard a month later, watching Mia chase butterflies through the very flowers Cheryl had tried to tear up. I finally planted the sign Hank had made, this property protected by the U.S. Navy. HOA not welcome. Every time I water those wildflowers, I remember one thing: they weren't just flowers. They were the first line of defense against tyranny hiding behind a clipboard. And this time, tyranny lost.